Welcome back to Hidden History, the podcast where we dive into the stories they don't teach you in school. I'm your host, and today we are covering something uncomfortable, something raw, something that's been whispered about in history books but never really explored. We are talking about women during the World Wars, but not the nurses, not the factory workers, not the resistance fighters you've heard about 1,000 times. No. Today we are talking about the women who survived the only way they could. The women who traded intimacy for bread, for safety, for survival. The women history tried to erase. And before you judge them, let me ask you this. What would you do if your children were starving? If enemy soldiers controlled your city? If the choice was between your dignity and your life? Let's find out what really happened in the shadows of the greatest conflicts in human history. Picture this. It's 1914. You're a young woman in France. Your husband just left for the front. You have 2 kids. Maybe you're pregnant with a third. 3 months later, you get the letter. He's dead. Killed at the man. You're 24 years old, alone, with no job skills beyond sewing and cooking. There's no life insurance. No pension yet. The factory jobs? They're not hiring women yet, not in large numbers. What do you do? Or imagine this. It's 1941. You're in occupied Paris. The Germans control everything. Food is rationed. Your kids haven't had real meat in months. They're getting thinner. One of them is sick, needs medicine you can't afford. Then an officer notices you on the street. He's polite, speaks decent French, offers you dinner. Real dinner. Beef, bread, butter, things you haven't seen in a year. He's not demanding, just offering. You know what he wants. He knows you know. Neither of you says it out loud. Do you go? This wasn't hypothetical. This was the reality for millions of women during both world wars. And here's what nobody talks about. The armies knew this would happen. They planned for it. Now here's where it gets really dark. Every major army in both world wars set up official brothels. I'm not talking about some underground thing. I'm talking about official, military-sanctioned establishments. The French called them maisons tolérées, tolerated houses. What a delicate way to put it, right? The German army called them Soldatenbordell. The British were slightly more discreet, but they had them too. Why? Disease control. Seriously, the generals weren't thinking about morality. They were thinking about battlefield effectiveness. You know what scared military commanders more than enemy bullets? Syphilis, gonorrhea, diseases that could take out entire regiments. So they created a system. Women were registered, given medical cards, examined weekly by army doctors. If you were clean, you got a stamp. If not, you were out until you were fixed. It was bureaucracy meeting the oldest profession in the world. Clipboards and medical exams and military efficiency applied to human desperation. Here's what really gets me. These women had quotas. In some German field brothels, women were expected to serve up to 30 soldiers a day. 30. Let that sink in. The French system was slightly less brutal but just as cynical. They had 3 tiers: high-class establishments for officers, mid-range for NCOs, and basic facilities for regular soldiers. Even in exploitation, there was a class system. And the women? Most were desperately poor. Some were widows. Some were refugees. Some were just young women from rural areas who came to cities looking for work and found this. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. For some women, this was actually safer than the alternative. At least in these official places, there were some rules, some protection. The alternative was operating independently, where anything could happen. Think about that moral calculation. The safest option was still absolutely terrible. But the official system? That was just one part of the story. The really complicated stuff happened in the grey zones, in occupied territories, in cities under enemy control. Let me tell you about France after 1940. The Germans occupy the country. 4 years of occupation. 4 years where French women had to look at German soldiers every single day. Soldiers who had food, money, power. Some women fell in love. Yeah, I said it. War doesn't stop human emotion. There were genuine relationships. German soldiers who learned French, dated local women, even had children together. Those stories exist. But most were transactions. Survival transactions. A German officer takes a liking to you. He can get you off the deportation list. He can get your brother released from a labor camp. He can make sure your family has enough to eat. He can protect you from the other soldiers who might not be so gentle. What do? Here's the really messed up part. After the war, after liberation, you know what happened to these women? They were dragged into the streets. Their heads were shaved. They were stripped, beaten, paraded through towns while crowds screamed at them. Collaborators. Horizontal collaborators, they called them. Thousands of women, maybe tens of thousands, humiliated publicly. Some were killed. And you know who was doing this? Often the same men who'd been silent during the occupation. Men who'd done nothing to resist. But now they were brave. Brave enough to beat defenseless women in the street. Brave enough to rip the clothes off a mother in front of her children. There's this famous photograph from Chartres, France, 1944. A young woman, head shaved, holding a baby. The baby's father was German. She's being marched through the street while people jeer. Her face is blank. Shock, maybe. Or just acceptance. The crowd around her. They look gleeful. Righteous. Satisfied. That woman's name was Simone Tussaud. She was 23. Her German boyfriend had left 6 months earlier when his unit retreated. She had his baby. She'd worked in a cafe where Germans came. That was her crime. After the photo was taken, she was imprisoned for 6 months. Her baby was taken away. She never got him back. Multiply that story by 20,000. That's how many French women were punished this way. 20,000. And that's just France. The same thing happened in Norway, in the Netherlands, in Belgium. Anywhere there'd been occupation. The women paid the price. But here's what really keeps me up at night. You know what we don't have 20,000 stories of? The men who collaborated. The businessmen who made fortunes selling to the Nazis. The police who rounded up Jews. The bureaucrats who made the trains run on time to the death camps. A lot of those guys, they went right back to their jobs after the war. Got their pensions. Died respected members of society. But the women who slept with the enemy to keep their kids alive? They were monsters. They were traitors. They deserved everything they got. That's what society decided. Now let's talk about something even darker. Something that makes everything we've discussed so far look almost civilized by comparison. I'm talking about the Japanese military system of comfort women. And I'm putting that in quotes because there was nothing comforting about it. It was slavery. Sexual slavery on an industrial scale. Between 1932 and 1945, the Japanese Imperial Army forcibly recruited somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 women. The exact number? We'll never know. But we know it was massive. These women came from Korea, China, the Philippines, Indonesia, anywhere Japan conquered. They were told they'd be working in factories, doing laundry, cooking. They were lied to. Instead, They were imprisoned in military brothels across Asia. Some were as young as 14 years old. They were given Japanese names. They were told to forget their real identities. They were servicing sometimes 30, 40, 50 soldiers a day. Every day. 4 years. If they got pregnant, they were beaten until they miscarried. If they got diseases, they were often just abandoned to die. If they tried to escape, they were hunted down and executed, sometimes in front of the other women as a warning. This wasn't the messy chaos of occupation. This was systematic, organized. There were regulations, schedules, medical protocols. And after the war, most of these women never made it home. Some were killed when the Japanese retreated. Some died of disease or injury. The ones who survived, they lived with shame and trauma for decades. Most never told their families. In Korean culture, in Chinese culture, the stigma was too great. Better to say you were dead than admit what had happened. It took until the 1990s, 50 years later, before the first women started speaking out publicly. And you know what happened? Japan denied it. Said there was no proof. Said these were just prostitutes who'd volunteered. It took decades more before Japan offered even a partial apology, and they still haven't fully acknowledged what happened. Kim Hak-sun. That's a name you should know. She was the first Korean comfort woman to testify publicly in 1991. She was 67 years old. She'd been 17 when she was taken. For 50 years, she'd lived with that secret. When she finally spoke, she said, "I wanted to die every day, but I'm still alive. And now I want the world to know what they did to us." She died in 1997. Japan still hadn't fully apologized. Let me bring this to somewhere you might not expect, America and Britain. Because yeah, the good guys weren't so good either. The US military didn't set up official brothels like the Europeans did, at least not officially. But they knew exactly what was happening. In port cities across the Pacific, in North Africa, in Europe, brothels appeared near American bases like mushrooms after rain. The military didn't run them, but they certainly didn't stop them. In fact, there are documented cases of US military police regulating these establishments, making sure the women were checked for disease, sometimes even providing transportation for soldiers to get there. It was unofficial policy. Nudge nudge, wink wink. We don't run brothels, but here's where they are and here's how to stay safe. In Britain, it was even more hypocritical. Prostitution was illegal, but during World War I, the Defense of the Realm Act gave authorities power to test any woman for venereal disease if she was suspected of infecting soldiers. Suspected. By who? By soldiers who'd slept with prostitutes and then blamed the women for giving them diseases. Women could be forcibly examined, forcibly detained, forcibly treated. No trial. No rights. Just suspicion. And here's the kicker. Men couldn't be tested or detained. Just women. Because obviously the women were the problem, not the soldiers paying for intimate encounters while their wives were at home. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, but some of these women chose this life, right? Some of them were professional prostitutes before the war. And yeah, that's true. Some were. But let me ask you something. What does choice mean when your country's at war? When the economy's collapsed? When you're starving? There's this concept in ethics called structural coercion. It means you technically have a choice, but the circumstances are so dire that it's not really a choice at all. Like saying someone chose to jump from a burning building. I mean, yeah, they jumped. But did they really have a choice? Most women who ended up in wartime brothels, official or otherwise, weren't there because it was their dream job. They were there because the alternative was worse. Starvation. Watching your children starve. Homelessness. In occupied countries, maybe deportation to a labor camp. Maybe worse. And let's be honest about something else. Society's always been hypocritical about this. We create conditions where women feel they have no choice but to sell their bodies, then we condemn them for doing it. We send young men off to war, acknowledge they'll want intimate companionship, create systems to provide it, then shame the women who provide it. The soldiers? Boys will be boys. The women? Whores. Sinners. Trash. It's the oldest double standard in the book, and war just made it more visible. Let me tell you about someone specific. Her name was Marthe Richard. She was a French prostitute who became a spy during World War I. Yeah, you heard that right. She worked in an upscale brothel in Paris that German officers frequented. The French intelligence services recruited her. She'd sleep with German officers, get them drunk, get them talking. She passed information that allegedly helped the French war effort. After the war, she became a heroine. She even became a politician. And in 1946, you know what she did? She proposed the law that closed all the legal brothels in France, the Loi Marthe Richard. The woman who'd worked in a brothel, who'd used that position to serve a country, decided that all brothels needed to be shut down. The irony is almost too perfect. Now, was that good or bad? Honestly, it's complicated. Closing legal brothels didn't end prostitution. It just pushed it underground, where women had even less protection. But Marthe Richard believed she was helping women, saving them from exploitation. Maybe she was haunted by her own past. Maybe she genuinely believed criminalization would help. Either way, it shows how complicated these stories are. Because here's the thing, there are no clean answers here. No easy moral lessons. War takes normal ethical rules and shreds them. It creates situations where there are no good choices, only less bad ones. Where survival requires compromises that would be unthinkable in peacetime. Let's talk about something that might surprise you. Some of these women had agency. Real agency. I know that sounds weird given everything we've talked about, but it's true. Not all women in wartime prostitution were passive victims. Some were shrewd operators who navigated a terrible situation as best they could. Some accumulated money. Some used their positions to help resistance movements. Some protected other women. Some survived and even thrived in circumstances that would have destroyed most people. There's this story from World War II France. A woman named Claire. Not her real name, obviously. She worked in a brothel in Paris that German officers frequented. But she was also passing information to the French resistance. Layout of German headquarters. Names of collaborators. Numbers of troops moving through the city. She wasn't a trained spy. She was just a woman in an impossible situation who decided to fight back the only way she could. The Germans never suspected her. Why would they? She was just a prostitute. Nothing important. Nothing threatening. That assumption, that dismissal, that's what let her operate for 3 years. She saved lives. She helped the resistance plan operations. And after the war, you know what happened to her? She was arrested for collaboration. Her head was shaved. She was put on trial. It took 6 months before someone from the resistance vouched for her, confirmed her story. She was released, but the damage was done. Her reputation was destroyed. She never told anyone her story after that. How many women like Claire were there? Women who fought back in the only way available to them, then got condemned for it because fighting back looked like collaboration? We'll never know. They took their stories to the grave. Here's something else we need to talk about. Children. Because war doesn't stop pregnancy. All across Europe, Asia, the Pacific, women got pregnant by enemy soldiers. Sometimes from relationships. Sometimes from assault. sometimes from transactions. And those children, those war babies, they paid a price too. In Norway, there were about 10,000 to 12,000 children born to German soldiers and Norwegian women. After the war, they were called Tyskbarna, German children. They were bullied, denied opportunities. Some were put in institutions. The Norwegian government officially apologized for how they were treated, but not until 2005. 2005. 60 years later. In France, thousands of children born to German fathers were put up for adoption, often without their mother's consent. In Japan, children of Japanese women and American soldiers were often abandoned, left at orphanages. These kids didn't choose their fathers. They didn't choose the war, but they paid for it their entire lives. And the mothers? Imagine surviving everything we've talked about, then having society punish you through your child. Watching your kid get bullied for having the wrong father. Being denied jobs because everyone knows you slept with the enemy. Some women gave up their children just so the kids would have a chance at a normal life. Now let's fast forward to today. Why am I telling you all this? Why does it matter? Because first, it's part of history that gets ignored. We talk about battles and generals and political decisions. We don't talk about the millions of women whose bodies became part of the war economy, whose choices were stripped away, who survived any way they could, then got punished for surviving. Second, because this stuff is still happening. Right now. War creates the same conditions today that it did in 1915 or 1942. Displacement, desperation, survival transactions. In Syria, in Ukraine, in South Sudan. Wherever there's conflict, there are women making impossible choices. And often, they're still being judged and condemned for those choices. Third, because the way we treat these stories matters. For decades, these women were invisible. They were shameful secrets. The comfort women of World War II. Most of them died without ever being acknowledged. The women who survived by sleeping with occupying soldiers? Many took their stories to the grave because they couldn't bear the judgment. But slowly, things are changing. Historians are listening to these stories now. Documentaries are being made. Memorials are being built. South Korea has erected statues to honor the comfort women. France has started acknowledging the injustice of the head shaving. It's not enough, not nearly enough, but it's something. Here's what I want you to take away from this. War doesn't just kill soldiers. It destroys the social fabric that protects vulnerable people, especially women. It creates conditions where survival requires impossible choices. And then, often, it punishes people for surviving. The women we've talked about today weren't monsters. They weren't villains. They weren't traitors. They were human beings in impossible situations, doing what they had to do to survive. Some made choices we might admire. Some made choices we might question. But all of them were trying to make it through one more day in circumstances none of us can truly imagine. And maybe, just maybe, instead of judging them, we should be asking different questions. Why did society abandon these women? Why were they forced into these situations? Why did the systems designed to protect people fail so completely? And what are we doing today to make sure it doesn't keep happening? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. As long as there are wars, there will be women in these situations. As long as we send young men off to fight, there will be systems, official or unofficial, to provide them with intimate companionship. As long as we create desperate conditions, there will be desperate choices. The question isn't whether these women were right or wrong, good or bad. The question is, what does it say about us, as a society, that we create situations where women have to make these choices? And what does it say about us that we judge them so harshly for surviving? I don't have easy answers. Nobody does. But I think these women deserve to have their stories told. They deserve to be remembered not as footnotes or shameful secrets, but as human beings who navigated hell and came out the other side. They deserve dignity. They deserve recognition. They deserve, at the very least, our attempt to understand rather than our rush to judge. So the next time you hear about the world wars, remember, the story isn't just about soldiers and battles. It's about millions of women whose names we'll never know, who survived in ways we'd rather not think about, who paid prices we'd rather not acknowledge. They were there. They mattered. And their stories are part of history too. Thanks for listening to this episode of Hidden History. I know it was heavy. I know it was uncomfortable. But these stories need to be told. Next week, we'll be covering something completely different, I promise. But for now, take care of yourselves. And maybe think about the women in your own life and what you'd want the world to remember about them if everything fell apart.